Hello and welcome to this edition of Finance and Technology Insights. I'm Brian Williams.
I'm Eric Buhrendorf. How's it going, Bri?
Going pretty well. How about you?
It's going pretty good. Allergies are wreaking havoc in my house. Everyone is just completely, not completely out of commission, but just suffering from the seasonal allergies.
Is it something specific or just everything's in the air?
It's hard to say. You know, allergy ailments are so seemingly nebulous. You know, my older daughter took yesterday off from school. She's got the pressure and the fog, and my dad's got brain fog, and my wife's all foggy. I'm foggy. It's kind of it's always, every single year we go through this, and it's always surprising that we're like, is this viral? Are we sick, or is this really just allergies? So anyways, that's what we're going through over here. What's going on with you?
We've actually been pretty lucky on that side. For those people listening out of the area, we've got a ton of rain the last week or so. But we've been outside as much as we could be, and luckily haven't had any issues. I feel like my wife had more allergy issues before she met me. Now they're kind of going away. I've never really had a problem with it, and knock on wood, my son hasn't yet, but I feel like that's something that creeps in as you get older for a lot of people.
And that's what makes it hard to believe that it's allergies. I think sometimes when you're like, I feel achy and foggy and sore throat, and you're like, I'm sick, but it's really, I think, not viral. It's just allergies.
Yeah. And my son's 5th birthday was Saturday, so he's got to have the day and the party on the same day. I know that's always a big deal when you're a kid, unless you're trying to string it out. But
Luke's 5th birthday was Saturday.
Yeah.
Wow, that came fast.
Yep. So he's we did the jump park on trampoline park locally on Saturday morning, and then we did a little bit of a family thing in the afternoon, and we strung out the cake. Lasted a few days. My wife made 2 cakes, one for the party and then one for home, both pink dinosaur cakes, which is what he asked for the second year in a row, believe it or not. So every time we have cake at a meal, we just throw the candle back on and sing to him again. So we'll sing "Happy Day After Your Birthday" to you. So he got a kick out of that. So, and then he stayed home yesterday from school, Monday, to get a little extra day with his grandmother that's here. So that was pretty exciting.
Oh, very exciting. Very exciting. So you want to go into the news? What's going on?
I was going to say, we got lucky with the rain on Saturday because he had his team photos for baseball on Saturday, which he wouldn't have been able to go to. So we were quietly praying for all that stuff to get rained out, and it was. So we got lucky there.
Oh, that's right. So he didn't get any T-ball or Little League in this weekend?
Nope, and that was a good thing. So
good.
How about your family? Anything exciting there?
What's going on with us? It's like asking, what'd you do this weekend? I'm like, what did I do this weekend? No, everything, we're into May now. So May 2nd. So I feel like we're up to speed now for the school year. And I think we're just we're cruising until we get to June, mid-June.
Yeah.
After this is their last full month of school. So I guess me and the wife we're not scrambling. We have 4 of the 8 full summer weeks allocated for their activities and things. Wow. So I think we're just kind of trying to fill in the gaps, and then I think we're seeing if we're going to take any travel or anything like that. Are you guys going anywhere besides the lake house this summer?
I don't think so. Nothing too nothing vacation-y, I guess. So my mother-in-law is in Florida. We actually might take the train down. So if we're going to do that, we'll probably stay 10 to 14 days.
The train down to Florida?
I think so. I think
that's cool. I always wanted to take a long train ride.
Yeah. So we're going to we might do something kind of a little bit longer first, just to get the feel for it. So we want to do like a New York to Montreal, because that line that's called the Adirondack line, and that just opened back up a few weeks ago. So we want to do that, and then maybe stay over in Montreal, and then come back down. So got to kind of ease into it with a youngster.
Yeah.
If he survives that and does a good job, then maybe we'll try the train to Florida. I think he'd get a kick out of that.
Montreal in the summer is really nice.
Yeah.
It's a fun little city. Have you ever been up to Quebec City?
I have not. Nope.
It's really cool. It feels very European like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went up when I went to college in Burlington, Vermont, so for my undergrad, and I was in ROTC, the Army ROTC program, and
Yeah.
they took us out to Quebec City. Quebec City in January is not good. It's
No.
way too cold up there.
Yeah.
So.
I have a quick funny story about Montreal. I had so one of my favorite players when I was younger was Tony Gwynn, and he was it's a big deal for baseball players to get their 3,000th hit. So I was in Connecticut the summer before my senior year. I just kind of stayed here, and one of my buddies lived up in New Hampshire, and he was also a Tony Gwynn fan. And this was like early in the summer. It was probably like, June or something. And I was like, hey, you know what? Tony Gwynn is going to play in Montreal in August. And, if he averages like 1.2 hits a game or whatever, and I had it all like kind of mathed out. And he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, we'll go, whatever. And it got really close, and it ended up happening. And I picked him up I left Connecticut, picked him up like on a Friday, left on a Thursday night and picked him up on a Friday, and we went to Montreal and we saw his 3,000th hit. It was pretty
That's
pretty
cool. Does the place go wild when that happens?
No. Well, normally it does, but that was in the twilight of Montreal baseball, as things are winding down there, and their attendance was awful even for a big event like that. So it was maybe like 7,000 or 8,000. It was not.
Oh wow. What was their team?
What's that?
What was their team called?
Montreal Expos.
The Expos. Wow, is that team no longer?
Yeah, they moved to Washington and became the Nationals.
Oh, I didn't know that. I remember. I have some old baseball cards from the '80s with the Montreal Expos players.
Yeah, they had those fun uniforms. They had good colors. They had
yeah, it was like all white with that swooshy M or whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny.
So they're when did they move to Washington? They moved to Washington in 2004. It's been almost 20 years they've been Nationals. Yeah. So anyway, that was kind of interesting. So I wanted to bring up this company. Have you ever heard of the company Chegg?
Chegg.
Chegg.
I don't think so. Can you?
I had never heard of them either, to be 100% honest with you. But they are. They are. Yeah. So they are. Well, let me pull up this tab. Why not here? Share a screen here. So they their shares are down big this morning. The shares are down big this morning, and it's shares dropped 40% after company says ChatGPT is killing its business. This is a story on CNBC. So again, sometimes you worry about people using things as an excuse. It says, in the first part of this year, we saw no noticeable impact from ChatGPT on the new growth. We're meeting expectations. However, since March, we saw a significant spike in student interest in ChatGPT. We now believe it's having an impact on our customer growth rate. So this is a company that provides homework assistance, online tutoring, and they're down 48% today. So,
wow.
I think this is one of those things, like a canary in the coal mine type thing. But when people talk about, we're in an interesting time right now because you've got big tech doing some layoffs, and it's hard to really figure out whether that is due to economic forecasting, a lot of them overhired during the pandemic, or if it's related to some of this automation stuff. And like everything, it's probably a combination of all of that kind of stuff. But I think more and more we're starting to see some of this. Maybe it's poor companies just blaming, ChatGPT and other automations on some.
If my company fails, I'm definitely going to blame it on AI.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't get our subscribers up to 100 by the end of the year, we definitely have to blame AI. But I mean, I thought that was kind of interesting because I think we're going to see one or two of these every day where somebody blames,
AI.
or at least for layoffs, or maybe, you'll probably see the other side of it too, where it'll be interesting to see how companies address the fact that they become more profitable with fewer employees, based on automation. We haven't quite heard that saying directly yet in some of these earnings calls, but it's bound to happen, right?
Yeah, I posted some articles on our Facebook page, facebook.com/finance and technology insights, all spelled out. And did I get oh, I didn't post it. I was reading about it and then I just must not have posted it. So I have two AI articles that I was going to bring up. One, Samsung, there was a leaked internal memo to the employees of Samsung, which is not a small company. And
No.
the leadership there is demanding that the staff do not use ChatGPT or AI technologies on their computers because they pose a security risk.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think you're going to see. I think we already are seeing that. Also, like shares dropping and companies being blamed for AI, but now security issues are going to be blamed on AI. And I'm not saying they lack merit, but it seems a little early to. It's like that when the schools last month. You saw a rash of schools block ChatGPT from campus, right?
Right, right. Um, Bloomberg had a story that Samsung has you had employees uploading code to Chat GPT and saying, fix this or streamline this code. So, when I first heard that it was a potential security thing, I said, oh, well, does opening up a window into Chat GPT, does that expose your company to incoming threats? That's initially what I thought, but no, it's actually the other thing that they're concerned about is,
Right. That's a good point.
programmers and coders.
Do we know if ChatGPT is taking inputs and to grow the data set?
Well, that's what we don't know yet, and how much they're obviously to some extent saving prompts and saving history. So whether
Right.
they're using that to internalize, you
And
know,
they are asking you if the output was good or bad based on
yes,
your prompt. So they are somehow taking weighted answers like that. But yeah, that's interesting. I guess if you upload corporate information and ask for a response or a processing of it, yeah, that could definitely be a problem. I guess I presume that they would the creators of artificial intelligence might not want to do that, because don't forget they have an imperative to I hate to say this, but like do no evil, you know what I mean? Like
right,
the first sign of malfeasance from these guys, they're gonna, the regulators will act overnight or something. I mean, there's certainly a groundswell underneath AI as far as like um regulating and limiting and the call to shut it down and delay and things like that. So they they have an imperative to get it right.
yeah, absolutely. Unless they have the hubris of the idea that it won't be found, or they won't be figured out. Like, oh, here's some people uploading some Samsung sensitive code. Let's take this, let's bury it in our language learning, but just try to prevent it from being called back. You know,
Yeah, like anonymizing it somehow.
yeah, yeah, or just
There will
learning.
be, well, let's put it this way, there will be mistakes made for sure.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Will the pitchforks and torches come out? Will remain to be seen.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated by what the content creators and your Wall Street Journals and Bloomberg's and New York Times, how they handle this kind of stuff. Because if everybody blocks their data from being scrubbed by artificial intelligence, then artificial intelligence may not be that intelligent if it's not pulling up some current information. So I'm curious to see what kind of licensing deals or whatever kind of comes from it, or if we just end up having these individual companies run their own, which we've talked about before, New York Times GPT, and then you're, hey, New York Times, what are the top 5 biggest stories this week in Connecticut type of thing,
Yeah. Or I wonder if they could build in like are you familiar with the incognito mode of your browser?
Yeah.
If they just have a user side setting that says, just don't take any of our prompts as a contribution to the data set.
Yeah, I could do
Something like
that.
that. I mean, a company version of ChatGPT might be interesting too, where IT centrally administers the platform for its staff. That's kind of what we do for our clients, and us internally, where whenever there's an online service or software, SaaS product or something, we always look for that like enterprise subscription model where, okay, IT can go in there, register the company, register the account, dole out access to users using the company's email address,
Yeah.
and then taking central administrative things like never take our prompts as a contribution to the data set. But
Right.
I mean, obviously they're still in early days, so I'm sure they may not even be thinking in those terms yet.
Yeah. So I had about 3 questions while you were talking there. Have any of your clients reached out and said, hey, we want to build some sort of machine learning or
No,
chatbot, even if it's just internal? No
no,
interest in that yet. Do you
no,
anticipate it? Is it something you want to get in front of?
no, even, and this, thankfully none of my clients watch me in this podcast, but the reason I suppose why I'm employed and my company does so well is because the lack of technological sophistication is so widespread. So even in the younger attorneys kind of coming up, I mean, they're starting to get technology. The technology natives, I guess, they can use the technology, but still they lack that deep connection with technology. They're not
Yeah,
nerds, you know what I mean?
I
So
agree.
it turns out just because you grow up with technology still doesn't make you a nerd, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Um,
No, I think
so
there's this kind of hump that people kind of our age went through. I mean, because we grew up like we had to fix stuff. We had to uninstall and reinstall drivers and load disks of Windows and CDs and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of had that. And by the time the next generation came, it was already built. It's like us driving a car.
yeah,
Like we don't.
yeah, but even in our generation, people like we were, maybe you or I were troubleshooting driver related issues. Everybody else was just like just double clicking setup.exe, like, and you know what I mean, or
Yeah, yeah.
rebooting, or just like not printing, going to the friend's house and printing,
Hmm.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
um I see it with my wife. My wife is technology native, but she is just so uninterested in what the technology is doing that she wields, So yeah, that's kind of what we see in our clients. Nobody, they're not even really talking about it, to be honest with you. So it's just there's such a lag
Mm.
between by the time, and we send out so many mailings and communiques to try to keep our clients abreast of new developments and things. But I guess you're busy just doing what you do, you know what I mean? And if it's
Yeah.
not your domain, then it's, you don't focus on it.
I would think for a law firm that would be, the amount of documents and stuff that they have to be able to search those and query those on some sort of internal chat bot and limit what employees have access to and that kind of stuff, I think would be.
Well, don't forget, Microsoft is coming out with, they are bundling the GPT in their 365 suite. So
That's
it
right.
will come to them, just not by virtue of they're not pulling it in. It's going to be like
Right.
pushed in, you know what I mean? So they'll be working with AI and GPT in their data set just by virtue of Microsoft. I think it's they announced it last month. It was called Copilot.
Yeah.
So you'll be in Microsoft Word, and then you'll be able to pull up a chat on chat sidebar next to Word, which I haven't launched the desktop version of Word in forever, and I was wondering if I have it yet on mine. They're doing like a slow rollout of it. But
yeah, I have the desktop version of Word. I don't.
Did you get Copilot yet? If you bring up a new Word document,
yeah, I don't see it anywhere.
I don't see it either. There's the editor is on as a sidebar. I don't see anything jumping off my page here. Developer, view, review. So I don't have it on my installation, and I'm not sure if they have these. Microsoft has this thing called the Ring release or whatever, where you can be on like the fast release of new features. I don't even know if I'm on that. But anyways, you'll be able to pull up Microsoft Word or whatever, and then I presume Copilot will be a button or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait a minute, there's a coming soon. Visual refresh is coming, which I have on now, and that's it. Nothing on Copilot. But you'll be able to say like, "Hey, draft me a pleading for whatever, based on what we have in our data," and it'll tap your data, and then that will be your corporate walled gardens that Microsoft's building for you based on your data environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think, yeah, especially in a legal firm, that would have some definite, trying to think back of, you go back and you say, all right, there was a client about 10 years ago. I think his name was John. How old is he now? That type of thing. Or what was our summary of that case? I think that would be a huge win for law firms.
Right. I still say that I can't wait for this all to come to voice.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to type. Like, who wants to type into a chat bot? Like, I don't know why more people aren't saying, this needs to come to voice. Like, we have smart speakers all over us. I mean, your phone, the house, the computer now is microphones. Like, I definitely want to just converse with this thing. I do not want to type to it.
Yeah, I'm sure and there's different apps and agents, I think, that are on top of that already. But there's so many layers they have to build as far as learning the different, dialects and that type of stuff. But it should be coming pretty soon, I would think.
Yeah. So one of the articles that I'll just bring up my window here. I think this is where I'm at here. So one of the articles that I shared was "The Godfather of AI quits Google with dire warning." Did you see that?
I did see that. Yeah, there's been a bunch of those. Every time I pull up YouTube, it's what's most extreme gets the views. So I think that's one of them. So what's his dire warning?
Yeah, of course. Well, obviously he's a mature professional, so who knows if he quits because of retirement or whatever, but he certainly left on the way out. Let's see, the speed progress. It is hard to quote. It is hard to see how you can prevent the bad actors from using it for bad things. He added that new systems built by the likes of Google and OpenAI have convinced him that the artificial intelligence is starting to exceed human intelligence in some area, and said the speed of progress in the development could become increasingly dangerous. Look at how it was 5 years ago and how it is now. Take the difference and propagate it forward. That's scary. It's kind of funny. He goes on to say profound risks to society and humanity. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, this was a 60 minutes piece, I think, and I did watch this clip on YouTube, but 60 Minutes has been all over this. I got to give them some credit. This is at least the third or fourth story they've done within the last couple months.
This was 60 Minutes.
What's that?
This was from 60 Minutes.
Yeah, the article says
He said he was responding to the New York Times.
Oh, he's responding to a CBS story in March. Yeah, from Google. Yeah, I guess I saw the interview on YouTube, but I didn't know where it came from. But I think it's interesting for somebody who's lived. We don't have a good concept of time and rate of change and exponential change unless you've kind of lived through it. And for somebody like him who's in his 60s and he's seen the rate of change and how fast it's accelerating, it's very easy for him to jump ahead to 2030 because he's seen 7 years compounded throughout his life, whereas somebody a little bit younger may not be able to fully appreciate the rate of change. So I think that perspective is valuable. I think some of the doom and gloom stuff, I mean, we've been there before. We've talked about that, about different technologies replacing certain things. But what's different about this technology is it doesn't need humans. It doesn't need us as much as, even something like the atomic bomb, you still needed the human to detonate it. So,
Right.
So that's probably what's scary, is this stuff is running and learning all of the time without a lot of human intervention. But it could still be, killed or unplugged, so to speak. So, I'm not probably as doom and gloom as he is, but I think his voice adds value.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the guy knows something about something, but yeah, I don't want to speak so carelessly and say, yeah, I don't want to be the counterpoint to the doom and gloom, right? I mean, my position on this has always been so far that, like, automobiles kill 40,000 Americans a year.
Right.
I recognize that. Nobody else seems to recognize that. That's a wars amount. That's a small wars amount of people that technology kills every single year in our country alone.
Yeah.
AI is going to do the same thing. AI is going to hurt people. It's going to. It's going to take jobs. It's going to cause significant loss. I mean, I can fictionalize how AI can bring bodily harm to humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I recognize that, but the value to humanity at a whole, I think, is going to be commensurate with, the automobile. I mean, it's the automobile internal combustion. It's destroying our environment. It's heating up our globe, but it also, in 100-year stretch, was a major contributor to that innovation curve. The S curve, the innovation curve.
Sure.
And we're responding to it. So I guess it's boring. My position is probably boring and not fun because I'm not extreme on either side.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, a lot of people are going to be injured from this, but the whole of humanity is going to be propelled forward.
Mm-hmm.
Step change.
Right. The scariest thing about it is we don't know how fast it's going to happen. If you end up in a position where there's just mass unemployment, like, we've never had to deal with that. We had a little bit of inflation the last couple of years and people went nuts. We've never had to deal with that.
But simultaneously, the mass unemployment is going to be paired with a mass abundance. Labor will. I mean, if they succeed in adapting the Vision AI to a bipedal humanoid robot, nobody needs to pick the fields anymore. Nobody needs to mow lawns anymore. Nobody needs to wash windows anymore. Nobody needs to deliver groceries anymore. You know what I mean? So, like, it's mass unemployment, but then it's mass, like, availability of time, so now you start talking about this concept of UBI, universal basic income, where, obviously the robot overlords, whether they're human or AI or not, they may be making all the money, but once they make all the money, like, and you don't have to do anything anymore, the people will just siphon that back, reappropriate that. Somebody's going to get immensely rich for sure, or
Sure.
there's going to continue to be an oligarchy in some form. There will be a small group of people that are just ridiculously rich.
Mhm.
At the same time, the concept of not working and being well fed and being satisfied and spending your entire life or a significant portion of your life in leisure time, like that's what kings and queens did 300 years ago.
Mhm.
And
Right.
for the entirety of, I guess, the developed human race, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right. I think the scary part about that is, although it sounds good, you're not in control of your income anymore. Where does it come from? You're not producing anything. You're not. Yeah, you get maybe your UBI or whatever, and you get a 3% raise, and then somebody runs for office and they're campaigning on a 4% raise, so you vote for that person instead. You don't have any levers to pull, and you hear this sometimes from older people who are living on their quote fixed income and their social security, and there's a mental aspect to, for the first time in my life, this kind of is what it is. I look around and there's nothing I can do to improve my position or change anything, and I got to live like this for another 40 years.
But my addition here is, if your quality of life, if you're already getting 3 squares every day,
Mhm,
if you're already cool and warm, and your body temperature is optimally managed, your abode is optimally maintained, so you don't have to worry about food, you don't have to worry about comfort, you don't have to worry about your your home.
mhm,
If you want, all you have after that is to spend all of your time contemplating how to improve your position. So if you want a bigger free home, or let's say the UBI entitles you to a 3 bedroom raised ranch, you know what I mean, and you're like, well, geez, I really want that McMansion, then but there's no work out there. I mean, I can't imagine anything else that would trigger innovation and inspiration. You know what I mean? Like, you've got nothing left but to be creative.
mhm. Creative, yeah, creative aside from productivity. If you're in a world where everything is so optimized, there's no desire to be any more productive, or there's no, what am I going to create? Why bother? I guess would be the. I mean, again, people are going to be different. There's people who retire and love it. There's people who retire and hate it. There's people who retire and they get bored and they go back to work. There's people so I think that's probably the closest model we have is people in retirement and what they do with their time. And um, so I don't
Yeah,
know if 30-year-olds would be able to handle that.
right, right. I don't want to overshare, but I'm just trying to think.
Mm,
If you had, I mean, I have significant control over my time now, and it's been like that for a lot of years now.
yeah.
I still choose to work in, intellectually. You know what I mean? And I still, but it, and I still, like yesterday, I mowed my lawn. I could pay a guy to mow it, but I just like to do it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So, if is that analogous to what it would be like if, you know if you don't have to do something but you do it anyways? My wife, she goes to the mall
Mhm.
because she just likes to go to the mall. She doesn't need to go, like, if she anything at that mall she needs, she could just order on Amazon. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Mhm.
But yet you still do the things. I don't know. Am I drawing like
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. But when it ends up being 100% of my concern is that you're still working towards, and you're still working towards something that can't be done by somebody else, and you still recognize your value to clients, your value to the community, and your decision to work or not work right now is based on, you could choose, like you said, you could choose to mow your lawn, or you could choose to go in your office and write 100 marketing emails on a Saturday or whatever. But if that option to not do that anymore, when you forced leisure, is that a word or a term that you want to? But when because you're doing something leisurely now because you have the opportunity to do that, but when it becomes the only thing you can do, I don't know if it's as appealing to some people. Again, some people it will be.
Right.
But you're doing it to step away from part of leisure right now is the leisure aspect of it, but some of it is just stepping away from the work. How many times do people say, I'm going for a walk to just get away from my computer
It's kind of like
screen?
saying like living in paradise isn't paradise.
Right. Once everything is paradise, then it's not.
And what's paradise after that? What do you have to
Well, I
look
mean,
forward
it's
to?
like when people complain about things now or nowadays or whatever, and
Nowadays,
you
yeah.
just want to be like, come on, man, like it's so supremely better than it's ever been. May
Yeah.
1st, 2023 is infinitely better than May 1st, 2022. You just don't, when you're living in it, you don't I was talking to somebody and they were complaining about something with like watching the NBA playoffs and they didn't have that game or whatever. And I'm like, you have like unlimited, like you could watch whatever you want, whenever you want, and like high quality, high def, right in your living room. You could, it was your parents were listening to the stuff on a radio and maybe they got their local team and that's it. And suddenly you get access to thousands of games a year and there happened to be one that didn't sync with your cable provider or whatever. But it's like, and that stuff's frustrating because it should be fixed, right? There is a there is a mechanism to fix it. So when it's not, it is frustrating. But again, it's all about perspective.
All right. I mean, I could keep going on this, but did we beat this dead today?
No, yeah, probably.
All right. How
Markets
about
down big today. We had another bank failure earlier this week, which we kind of knew what was coming, and JP Morgan bought that. So now you're getting the calls for, well, it's great that these bigger banks are stepping up, but is this really what we're trying to do? Are we trying to get bigger banks bigger? Isn't this kind of the opposite of what we're trying to do? So
that's a good
First
point.
Republic Bank, which had been on the brink for, which was one of the ones that was rumored as being an issue when Silicon Valley Bank failed, and now JP Morgan stepped in, and so they'll handle that. But bigger banks continue to get bigger, and smaller banks continue to have issues.
Let's itemize what you just said.
Yeah.
Can you take us from the top?
Yeah. So First Republic Bank was a bank a little bit in a similar situation to Silicon Valley Bank. So Silicon Valley Bank failed earlier this year when there was a run on deposits. Some of that warranted, some of that probably not. But banks aren't equipped to have everybody take all their money out at once or a significant portion of that. And they were very top heavy, and that a lot of their clients had a lot of the money. It wasn't a bunch of mom and pop accounts with $100 in them. It was big accounts. So in big accounts with tech savvy people, so that when they started to move, it just accelerated a bank run. So
What's the timeline here, though? First, did this happen over the weekend?
It did. They always happen over the weekend. But they were. Let me pull up their stock quote here.
So over the weekend, First Republic was sold to JP Morgan Chase, right?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, sold.
Because they were at the imminent failure point, right?
Right. So JP Morgan did not assume any of the corporate debt or preferred stock. So institutional investors will not be made whole. So this isn't some kind of, bailout thing where people that owned First Republic stock, First Republic Bank was, that was a high of $216 on October 1st, 2021. And even coming into this year, closed out last year at $121 a share. And now it's worthless. So
just goes to zero. Is that how that works?
Yeah. Yep. Entering the banking crisis at $115 a share, First Republic stock dropped on trading to the stock exchange, $3.51 on Monday. I don't think it's trading anymore.
Yeah, bring that up if you don't mind sharing. So, in the turmoil set off by Silicon Valley Bank's collapse, First Republic was initially bailed out by the private sector. In March, it received $30 billion in deposits from 11 of the country's largest banks, including J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Wells Fargo. But First Republic struggled nonetheless, and its condition had been deteriorating for weeks. It had seen a large outflow of funds as depositors rushed to pull their money and park it in institutions they viewed as safer. I wonder where the money goes from. If you're pulling out billions from a bank like that, where are you parking that? I mean,
Yeah, J.P. Morgan, all the biggest banks.
you're just going from one bank to another, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing too is I'm surprised the run keeps happening on these banks because the federal government keeps protecting the depositors. So why even bother at that point?
I know, and that's you would think that would hold up, that people wouldn't want to. It's not when FDIC insurance kicks in, it's not an instantaneous process, so there's still a little bit of hassle there.
Paperwork, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like a bank goes out and the next day you have access to your money through a different bank. It's still a process.
So are we project 24 months from today? If we were to transport ourselves 24 months from today and look backwards, what's in the wake? What's in the wake from, you know what I mean? What's ahead of us? That's a reverse way of saying what's going to happen in the next 24 months.
Yeah, I think it's still very much a very sensitive market, and it could happen at any time to any bank. I mean, if you could,
I mean, a run is a run, right?
Right. And it could be started by some influential people on Twitter. It could be a Twitter hack. It could be, something like that happens where money just accelerates. And for people, it's just not worth the hassle. There's no loyalty. There's nothing. You don't get any points for, all right, I stuck around with this bank and they made it through. It's like, why bother? If you're with your local community bank that's in trouble, you don't get any points for loyalty. And there's no, unless you feel that the advantages of doing something locally, which I don't think most, especially on the younger side, people do. One of the issues with Silicon Valley Bank is they would say, we have to have the entirety of your banking relationship in order to give you this loan. So I'm not sure how kosher that is or how common that is. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound
Seems
right.
Anti-competitive. Yeah.
Yeah. So that could be either that could be sort of an implicit, if you're borrowing money from a bank, do you feel like you're more likely to get that loan if you have accounts there and something like that? So if you feel that there's an advantage to being with a community bank or being with a smaller bank, then you might stick around. But
does it seem a little safer to be with a smaller bank right now?
No, definitely not. It wouldn't feel that way to me.
Huh. So there's just uncertainty across the land, or what?
I would say so. I don't want to be too extremist, but I think when just something happens, there's nothing really in place to stop it.
Can we review any open financials of a bank that we might be banking at to see what the formula for catastrophe looks like? I mean, because I see that these were low interest mortgages that as the Fed increases the interest rates, the low interest mortgages become less profitable, and then the bank, if they need to raise capital, sell them at a loss, and then finish my sentence. Where am I going with this?
Yeah, if you're looking for some sort of commonality, if you're going into the bank balance sheets, I think I'm sure AI has scrubbed through all of this stuff and you can search it. But I think what you're looking for is you're looking for banks that had longer term treasuries that invested in farther out on the curve, so to speak. So what happens is when rates are very low in the short term, if you get a bond a year out and it pays next to nothing, you're tempted to go out and say, well, I'll just get a bond that's not due for 10 years because at least I'm going to get 3%. But what happens when those short-term bond rates move up, then it's like, well, if I can loan money to buy a bond for 3 months and get 3%, then why would I go out 10 years? So the 10-year becomes less desirable. And then the value of those assets drop. And then when people go to take their money out, banks have to sell assets that have depreciated and are less than they paid for them. And that's how this stuff kind of snowballs.
Got it.
So I think if you were looking for something, you'd look to see who's got longer dated treasuries on their book, right? That they could be forced to sell at a loss if a lot of people want to take their money out. You can look at the loan thing, although that hasn't really come up too much. That's kind of a legacy of the 2008, crisis. Who made bad loans that aren't coming due? Although Silicon Valley, that was part of their issue too, is some of their loans and the people they lend money to. Going back to, I guess, our original discussion on this, the AI discussion. It's like, wow, we loaned money to this company that had, 200 employees. That was this unicorn startup, and they were working on a solution that's now been solved by this newer company with newer unicorn that's got 5 employees. And now we loaned money to this institution, this new company. And now we're not going to get paid back. So there's some of that involved too. So it all ties together.
So everybody took their money out of First Republic because of lack of confidence. So I think I know where it went. How about this segue?
Yeah.
Tell me if this is a great segue. Nearly $1 billion deposited by Apple Card owners 4 days after the savings account launch. What say you?
So that's
you're not an Apple fanboy, so
no, I'm not. I mean, that's a wrapper on an existing, Apple's not a bank. They don't have any sort of banking credentials or license or anything like that. So they're offering this high yield savings account that's paying a little bit over 4%. But it's a Goldman Sachs savings account that somebody could have bought, 6 months ago or a year ago. There's nothing special going on here, I guess, but this is, this is the Apple brand. This is what they do, right? They're going to take something that's maybe sort of out there already, and they're going to slap their logo on it, and people are going to get giddy for it. And maybe it gives them an extra sense of confidence, but
let me lay it down. So Apple on April 17th introduced the Apple Card savings account, which you had to have. I don't know when Apple launched it. They probably say in this article, but Apple has had a credit card for years that they launched a number of years ago. And as you said, it's really an Apple branded Goldman Sachs credit card, right? Line of credit.
Yep.
So last month, April introduced a savings account that you can open up adjacent to that credit card. And this doesn't say right at the top, I don't think, but what was so compelling about the savings account is I think they were offering 4%. Apple is offering 4.15 APR on the savings account. Mm-hmm. And so this article says when they launched that Apple Card savings account, 1 billion flooded into those deposits as a result of that product. I mean, that's pretty fast. That's pretty fascinating on the surface, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it's points to the genius of Apple marketing, and I guess some credit to Goldman Sachs for pursuing that relationship and getting that going. I wonder what the percentage of people who have these type of accounts know who the bank is behind them. Probably less than 5%. Maybe they don't care, but these are still bank accounts that are still subject to FDIC and insurance limits and things like that. So
there are no fees and there's no minimum balance, so the accounts can't exceed the $250 FDIC insurance limit. That's interesting. The competitive APR and simplicity of the Apple savings account will give it an edge over competing high-yield savings account providers. Getting a higher rate for a savings account typically requires dealing with a digital bank, and not many popular financial companies are able to compete with Apple on APR. Citibank, for example, has a 3.85 rate, and Discover is 3.75. So, and Capital One at 3.5. So that's interesting.
It is, yeah. That's a fairly decent account, but it's it's marketing to some extent. I mean, the rate's good. There's no denying that, but I don't think it's anything too special or anything to get super excited about. Now, is there a specialized app or something? Is there something digitally that makes it more appealing?
I think you manage it in the Apple Wallet. Again,
Mhm.
you're not an Apple user, right? So you haven't enjoyed the wonders of the Apple Wallet yet.
No, I have not.
um, yeah, I'm guessing that's where you apply for it. So, all right, that didn't blow your hair back. I thought that was a pretty fascinating, especially in conjunction with the first American. We're having all these runs on banks, these sound like 1920s era problems. You know what I mean? Like
Right. Yeah.
runs on banks. When was the last time a run was on a bank? I don't know. We read about it in newspaper or in history books and see it in black
Mhm.
and white Time Warner classics. But yeah, I mean, $1 billion in 4 days floods into a new savings product launched by Apple and Goldman. I thought that
Yeah.
was kind of.
I'll share my screen here for a second, because I think there's two other. I think there's some other perspective that matters here. Is this the? Let's see. So remember what these are is these are spread products. So they're taking, Apple's taking the money in, they're handing it to Goldman Sachs, and then what's Goldman Sachs going to do with it? Well, so they're going to turn around and they're going to invest that primarily in U.S. Treasury. So 1 month U.S. Treasury is getting 4.47. So what they're going to do is they're going to take your money in, they're going to invest it at 4.47 and then give you 4.15 or whatever it is. So they're going to make a 30 basis point spread on that. They could go out 2 months and get 5.2. So they're going to ladder that. They know that if 1 billion flows in, it's very likely that 1 billion flows out within the next week. So they're going to ladder out these maturities, and they can go out over a year and still make well over what they're paying for you. And if these rates start to drop, there's nothing that's guaranteed about that savings account. There's, that could drop at any point, but that they're going to move in sync with some of these short-term yields. So, whereas, you could get excited about a savings account, there's certainly other things out there. It's not apples to apples. I understand that, but I just want people to understand what those products are and where they come up with those rates and why some pay more than others. And
Hmm.
that's why internet banks or things that are more efficient, they're going to be close. They're going to have a higher yield because they don't need to make as much on the spread. They don't have physical locations. They
Right,
don't
they don't
have
have the overhead.
employees and all that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
so that's just a spread product there. So, um,
All right. Well, this is I don't know. What do you think? You want to call it a day?
yeah, I think that's
That's
probably
uh
good.
that's another this week in AI and Apple. No, I'm
And
kidding.
savings accounts, and we
Yeah,
cover it all.
we cover it all. No, I think the AI bit that's gonna be the gift that keeps on giving this show, at least for the next few years.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's moving so fast that every week is so different than, did you get a chance to watch that All In podcast? Is that something you're into yet or not?
I did, and it was something that I would like, and I think I started listening to it. But I honestly, my podcast list is so long now.
No, I know it's really
I've
hard.
got my habitual go tos, and then if I can get through those, then it's like whatever's new allowed.
Yeah, I did catch Smartless last night when they had Rob Lowe on. You got to have some fun stuff in there mixed in with your
Yeah,
learning and
I
work
used
stuff.
Joe Buck used to have a podcast called Daddy Issues, which I used to listen for my comic relief. I don't think they're doing it anymore, or I just haven't checked in on them lately. Did you ever listen to that one?
Okay. I didn't. Nope.
Oh, it was very funny. Listening to Joe Buck speak unfiltered was very funny.
Yes. Yeah. Bob Costas is a little bit like that too. He's so buttoned up, but when you get him, out of get him away from the teleprompter, he's a little more fun.
Yeah, yeah. So that's good. All right, I'm Eric Buhrendorf, CEO of EVERNET Consulting. We're a national-based IT support cybersecurity firm. We just launched a digital marketing agency line of business, so we now do websites and digital marketing internally. If you want to discuss your technology or marketing needs, go to evernetco.com and schedule a discovery call with me. Give us a follow here on Finance and Technology Insights. We record every week on Tuesdays when we're able. And pass it over to you, Bry.
All right, Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting. We're a Connecticut-based investment advisory firm. So what that means is we work with individuals and small business owners, primarily to set up their retirement accounts, work through other financial goals, and powering through AI and other tools to make these things happen. So Brian Williams, Northshire Consulting. You can find us northshireconsulting.com. Social medias 401k and beyond. And I guess we'll see you next week.
See you next week.